Gentlemen, there go. I got the seconds. Now we go. Live on Get Vocal is another episode of Shift Drink, your source for industry news, restaurant, food, business, all that jazz. I got my main man, Chef Dadisi. What you sipping on there, sir?
The finest year of H2O ever made.
You don't drink at all?
I don't drink at all.
Well, that's what's up. That's a beautiful example. I'm gonna go ahead. Hello for my friends at St. Superi out in Napa. We did a dinner a couple months ago in May, and they sent me a couple of bottles. It's a Merlot of 14, and it's nice. I appreciate it.
I bet. I saw the post on Instagram. So, but let me clarify. I am not drinking. It is not that I do not drink.
Okay.
So I'm going through this whole weight loss and health kind of thing going on. So the empty calories just kind of they got to be cut out until I reach my goal. That's it.
Do you think?
Once I lose this 50 pounds,
yeah,
5 bottles.
Yes, sir.
Drink
that's the show. We're gonna do that live. Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
All right. Listen, we're talking about emotional intelligence. People think that you have to be a great cook to become a great chef and ascend through the ranks, and you do have to be able to cook if we're being real about it.
Right.
But I think one of the things that's often overlooked in my career is the ability to have sort of emotional flexibility and awareness. So I really wanted to talk about that for people that are aspiring chefs or chefs that just are stuck, because nobody wants to be angry all the time. And sometimes you just don't know until you have the tools. And I'm not perfect, but I do know I'm a better chef than I was emotionally than I was last year, but definitely 10 years ago. So I'm going to, it is often some tough situations. And I just want to ask you out the gate, Chef, what are some ways that a chef or a cook may be tested emotionally?
I got a list of them, but I'll go down my quick list. I'd say when you have disrespectful people working in the back of the house, that can test you emotionally. When you have cooks that no matter how many times you train and teach them a certain recipe, they won't follow it when they're doing prep. That's like a pet peeve, I think, probably for most chefs. And even though I'll hear chefs say things like, well, I don't really follow recipes, that's bullshit. Yes, you do. You can't keep consistency if you don't have recipes that people are following. I'd say people who look at the clock, like they come to work late and then they want to leave early, or they'll start a job and not finish it. Those are things that I know from a chef's perspective, they're going to test you, right? You're going to test where you're at and how you're able to lead your kitchen when you have people with those kind of bad habits. And I think the other one for me, and there's more, it has to do with the front of the house. It's about when you have people in the front of the house who don't know the menu. You've trained them. You know those tasting trainings that you do. You may work with the beverage manager and do the pairings and all of that stuff, and they still don't know the menu. So that when you're running live with this new menu, they keep coming back to the kitchen asking you questions about a menu that you spent 2 days training them on. And then, I think my last big thing that tests me is when I hear a server say things like to a customer, I don't know what that tastes like. I don't eat that. They don't give the customer the experience of the place that they're in. And my thing is you have to find different ways to communicate a menu to a customer, but don't ever say to them, I don't, because that doesn't give the right message. So I think from a testing your emotional intelligence standpoint, first you got to, I think we need to really kind of explain what emotional intelligence is to people who are listening, because a lot of people don't understand what that is. So I think when you think about it, it's about owning and managing your emotions, right? And then it's also about understanding the impact and influence that your emotions have on other people's emotions. And that can work in any environment. That's not specific to what we do as chefs, right? So all of the things I kind of listed, they all tend to be triggers for different chefs for different reasons. And then you got to figure out how you're going to address and deal with those things in a professional manner. Okay.
Well, speaking about addressing and dealing with them, can you give me an example or two of like on both sides of, when I have several of what I've, regretted, or maybe I wish I could have,
Mhm.
like I wish I had a mulligan, like, damn, I did that wrong. And also some ways in which, or an example of how you've handled it properly, because I think that's not acting from that anger immediately. Do you have one or two
I've
examples?
got one example that I really wanted to point out because I thought about the positive thing, but I think a lot of times we want to show the good so much that we forget the lesson in the negative. And so for me, it was really more of an example of the negative. It was, I worked in a big kitchen one time. I ran the a la carte service, and I had a 19-year-old working in the kitchen doing prep work. And, dude had bad habits. He was kind of brash. Of course, he was young. And I don't know what he said to me, but he said some shit that set me off. And I mean, set me off to the point of where I invited him to go outside to the back alley. Like, he took me there. And it takes a lot to really kind of get me there. But that particular day, and it wasn't that I was having a bad day, I think it was kind of a buildup. I didn't like that motherfucker anyway, because he always caused problems in the kitchen. And I just kind of, I had my
Right.
fill. And I invited him man to man. We can go outside. He understood what I said. He was like, "Oh, so you trying to tell me you want to fight?" I said, "I didn't say I was going to fight you. I just said we're going to go outside and have a conversation as two men, and we'll see what happens then." But I lost it, and my sous chef pulled me to the side. He's like, "Chef, you know you're wrong. You can't do that." And my sous chef was right. I was wrong. I had allowed the entire kitchen to see me lose my cool, and that's when the issue then didn't become about the 19-year-old. It was really about me. Wherever my
Yeah.
mind was, I was in a space where I wasn't tolerant to anyone. And he just was the motherfucker of that day. It could have been somebody else. And I think
Hmm.
part of it was also just that man shit, right? This little young buck bucking up to a grown ass man. I'm like, dude, I will whoop your ass. Like for real, for real. And that was a negative. Now, I would never do that again. And I haven't had that situation again, but it happened. And the way I ended up ultimately reconciling it, I apologized to him. I actually went and apologized to him. I don't know if he understood the apology in terms of where it was coming from, but I thought from a leadership standpoint, it was my role to show my kitchen that I'm a leader, not just a chef who gets angry. That's kind of my
Hmm.
example of that.
I think that's a wonderful example, man, because we've all had those times. I know, I've challenged a cook or two to some shit that I shouldn't have. And I just think I want to reiterate that for people that missed it. It had nothing to do with the other guy. It had nothing to do with really anyone else. But if you look beyond the guy and the beef, it had to do with self, and it
Mm-hmm.
had to do with the people that you were affecting. I think that was, and you learn from it. There's no losses if we
Mm-hmm.
learn from it. So anyway, I don't want to talk. I want to hear you talk. You were recently employed by um, the executive diner in Alexandria, Virginia, and there was a story. If people want to look it up, it was kind of publicized, which was a little weird to me. The way the story was written, it was just like, fired, like. Chef Dadisi is fired. Like I remember that in the headline. I thought that was weird from a media perspective. But I read the article and the quotes from the owner. Now I don't know this guy, never heard of him in my life. And I'm not asking you really you can say whatever you want, but that shit would have pissed me off. I've been written about, and I know when, owners or former partners say shit about you in the media, sometimes I've reacted. I wish I, had it back. And sometimes I just, let it go and release my own statement. But I thought that you handled it really well. So we all have those times where whether the media catches up on it
Mm-hmm.
or not. I'm wondering how I thought you handled it like really well. There was a follow up article a few days later because the guys, I don't know this and we haven't really talked about it, but the guy seems like a shit show. Alexandria's my hometown. It doesn't seem like a great place and he sounds crazy. but I thought that the way it had nothing to do with him, the way you handled it well. So how did you, like, I can see how you can get to that point, but talk us through how you sort of navigated that situation.
The best way I can describe it is this. Ultimately, as a chef, you own your brand, and you also own your brand as a human being. So if you see two people out cursing each other, each other out in the street, they're arguing, screaming to the top of their lungs. You walk by that as an observer. You don't know who started what, and you don't know who's crazier.
Right.
I allowed him to speak in the way that he speaks, and that showed in the articles that were written. Even though the articles could have been written better, many people contacted me behind the scenes saying, "What the fuck?" And most people responded in kind of the same way you did. They were like, "Man, you were really, really calm about it. Wasn't my money, wasn't my property, wasn't my restaurant." You follow me? So at the end of the day, it was his show, his money. He could do whatever he wanted to do. And I think we as chefs have to understand that when we are working for someone else and it's their business, we're employees. Doesn't matter what our celebrity is, none of that shit. We're employees. Until you own it yourself, your say only goes so far. And that's the best thing I can say about it. My brand means a lot to me, and therefore I'm going to represent myself accordingly. That's it.
Yeah. Well done. I mean, I would have went a little different, especially I got a podcast too. I can, but we're gonna say that for later. I might have a partner watching. How do you cultivate that skill? Like, how do you work on it? A lot of us just aren't taught that. Many chefs, especially, I don't want to just say black guys, but a lot of guys and men and women, boys and girls, come up through the kitchen through like, we don't have these examples in our lives, and this is why the kitchens are like, I don't want to say gangs, but we gravitate towards them as father figures, right? So we don't have people who are emotionally intelligent many times, not all the time. And that's not a indictment. That's just a matter of fact. I didn't grow up with these examples in a large way. So how do you cultivate that skill?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with how I came into the industry. I spent 27 years in another industry in the corporate world where you were constantly trained to control yourself, and no matter how stressful it was. And trust me, I worked in some stressful environments. But coming into the kitchen, my focus was different. My focus was about the work and about the fact that I understood this is someone else's time. They're paying me for my time to do a job for them. When I look at what my goals are to become a restaurateur myself, I have no desire to go out here and get in arguments and fights with people that become very public. It's not in my nature. So I'm more concerned with allowing the other person to present themselves as the asses they are, and truth will be revealed. People will see it for what it is. So, was I always this person? Hell no. There was a time in my life, man, I'd be 0 to 60, bruh, 3 seconds. That's not who I am now. And so that's the simple answer. I think you've run out of time, and I've got like 5 seconds. So we might have to do 15 more minutes, man. Set it up again.
Well, I tell you what, thanks, Chef. I appreciate it. Get vocal, don't play, man. When you run out of seconds, you run out. I will say we're jumping into a vocal right after this. I don't know if Dadisi, if you're sticking around, but I'm gonna go ahead and click if anybody wants to join the conversation and add something to the narrative just for a couple of minutes. That's what Get Vocal is about. It's like comment section. It's like the comment section with video and audio. So join the convo live. Please just click the button. We're gonna do that. I will say this in closing. Thank you so much, Chef Dadisi, for joining us on Shift Drink here on Get Vocal. I will say this, you have to get mentors, and you have to read books, and you have to educate yourself, or listen to programs, and be like the people that you want to be. I learned that a long time ago. Like, you have to there's someone out there that's doing it right. I remember I met Rick Tremonto in Bermuda in '05, and Rick Tremonto has a great article on the web somewhere that I read. And he used to be, I don't want to say I'm out of control of my words, but he turned his life over to Christ. And that was his way of switching, of flipping the switch. And I'm sort of condensing right here, but there are ways and people out here that do it, in a professional manner, and they operate in a high level. And I know everybody's thinking about Gordon Ramsay. I know I can hear people talking about that. Gordon Ramsay that you see on TV is not the same guy that you see like when he's sitting down with the Fox executives. It just ain't it. So you got to understand, when you talk about brand and roles, there's different time to be chef on the line, and there's another time to be chef the businessman. You can't be that guy or that woman that's hollering at people and brash all the freaking time. It just doesn't work all the time. So in closing, just, educate yourself and read books on how to become more emotionally stable and flexible. So that's it. We're going to jump into this Get Vocal right after. We're here every Tuesday night at 9:00. A different guest next week. Please join us. Thanks again to my man, Chef Dadisi. We're going to jump into this Get Vocal, and we'll see y'all next time. Don't forget, take cold showers. I'll explain that later. Peace.